This is the Media Police Post, broadcasting from the Fort Hall School of Government in Nairobi, Kenya. In this show, we police the state of truth in the Republic. And because truth is communicated to us by journalists and analysts, we have made it our civic duty to put it to the test. We advance from two confirmed truths about the media. One, and according to Roger Stone, the media is either lazy or evil. And for the most part, it is both evil and lazy. That is why the truth, their truth, must be put to a test.
And two, that journalism is verified gossip. In fact, what is presented to us as news analysis is gossip that has been verified by journalists. This gossip has to be ground-truthed. We will assess the state of truth in what they submit to the Republic, and we will pass verdict on what is true and what is not. For the record, we are not journalists. We are thinkers. We are not lazy or evil, and we do not verify gossip. What we give you is the truth that sets you free.
On today's show, we will discuss the ideas that reflect up unformed and uninformed opinions, and ideas that made you stupid. Narratives that fell into the cognitive trap of we see things as we are, not as they are. Narratives based on conjecture history and those that smack of envelope journalism. Welcome AX and welcome Serbia.
Thank you so much.
AX.
Today, I will be addressing Irungu Kang'ata's article in The Nation. In a piece titled, and I quote, "Why Kenyans Should Vote Against Raila Odinga," end quote, Kang'ata illustrates how rational voting dictates that Kenya should vote against Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga. For the unaware, there is no such thing as rational voting. But there is something called rational choice theory. And I believe that this is what Kang'ata was alluding to. Rational choice theory states that individuals rely on rational calculations to make rational choices that result in outcomes best aligned with their own best interests. When applied to politics, these interests are about maximizing the common good. Now, based on this criterion, and according to Kang'ata, Ruto is the only choice for a rational voter. This is because, and again, according to Kang'ata, the state of the economy, which is the rising cost of living and the fuel, dollar, and climate crises, are all President Kenyatta's fault. Therefore, to maximize the common good, i.e. fix the economy, the rational vote is to vote against Uhuru and therefore for Ruto. Simple enough, right? Not if you've spent the last 3 weeks damaging the ignorance that defines Kang'ata's articles. Allow me to explain. First, rational choice theory does not have a place in our politics. Why? Because human beings never act rationally. In the 1970s, two psychologists proved once and for all that humans are not rational creatures. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky discovered cognitive biases, or a systemic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality in judgment. Cognitive biases are why someone who is afraid of dying will refuse to fly on a plane but drive their car, despite the fact that you are 86 times more likely to die from a car crash than from a plane crash. Put simply, humans systemically make choices that defy clear logic. This becomes all the more apparent when you recognize that in politics, what is rational for one person is not rational for another. Equally, how one chooses to express that rationality differs from person to person. Therefore, telling me to vote rationally would be like telling the sun to have a moral compass or telling a human to lay an egg. It is impossible. Now, since human beings are fundamentally irrational and Kang'ata believes that a rational voter should vote for Ruto, does this mean that every single one of us lacks the capacity to vote for Ruto? Or, more likely, does it mean that Kang'ata once again robbed a complex theory, a complex subject of its nuance? I say once again, because the reference point he uses to justify a Ruto vote under rational choice theory, that is a state of our economy, is nuanced and complex. The problems, which are the rising cost of living, are not the fault of the Uhuru administration, but of wider geopolitical and environmental factors. So, if, as Kang'ata argues, a vote for Ruto is the way to resolve these issues, does this mean that Ruto has a way of convincing OPEC to increase oil production to lower the cost of crude oil and the cost at the pump, at home? Does a vote for Ruto mean that Ruto has a way of ending COVID so that our supply chains are no longer disrupted? Does this mean that Ruto also has a way of fixing the climate change that has affected our food security? Or is Ruto's only way of solving these complex, dynamic issues to unseat President Kenyatta? Highly irrational, right? And yet Kang'ata attempts to make the case that a vote for Ruto is rational. A classic case of seeing the world as you are and not as it is, Dr. Kang'ata. And an even better display of irrational thinking.
Wow.
Yeah.
So today I want to respond to Makau Motua's article in the Daily Nation titled The Ruto Missteps and Gema Rebellion. Makau's article has one point. He accuses Ruto of committing two cardinal sins. Cardinal sins that will lead to Ruto's inevitable political downfall. The first sin was the sin of ambition. Ruto set out to make his boss politically impotent. His boss was heavily criticized and undermined. Ruto even dared to usurp his boss as Gema's kingpin. However, he aimed but missed in this endeavor. The second sin was the sin of choosing Gachagua as his running mate. Ruto opposed the opinions of the lawmakers from Mount Kenya who endorsed Kithure Kindiki as his running mate. Instead, he went with Gachagua, who had been vehemently rejected by UDA politicians on the grounds that he was a dictator. We are the fifth estate like Makau Motua. He's our friend. However, in our view, his article is incomplete. Ruto has committed one more cardinal sin, a third sin which Motua's article left out. William Ruto's third cardinal sin, the sin of ignoring defections. Ruto has lost key seasoned allies because of his dogged pursuit of the Gema masses. High-ranking UDA party officials like Omingo Magara, Kipruto Kirwa, and Hussein Adan defected to Azimio, causing UDA to suffer a severe loss. But Ruto did not take the defection seriously, perhaps assured by the purported unwavering support he had in Gema at the time. But despite putting Gema first, Ruto still lost significant allies in Gema and continues to face a rebellion in the mountain. The defection of Ngereshe signaled the start of Ruto's wars in Mount Kenya. For Ruto to win, he desperately needs 80% of Gema and a high voter turnout in the region. And we know from history that when Gema is not fielding a candidate, not only is voter turnout low, but Gema will not vote as a unified bloc. Two-thirds will go one way and one-third will go another way. This is why Ruto needs the Gema politicians to secure and consolidate the Gema vote. And yet Ruto is letting them slip from his grasp. Ruto is losing his important generals, and now those left in UDA are nothing but wapenzi watazamaji. Bystanders who are lauded over by his running mate Gachagua and disrespected every day. Only one question remains. Does Ruto truly believe he can win the election with the crop he has left? History tells us no, he will lose. I will elaborate how using a story from Napoleon Bonaparte in the Battle of Leipzig in 1813. The battle was against a coalition of his former allies led by Russia. Prior to the big battle, Napoleon had a falling out with his allies who defected to Russia's side. But since Napoleon was a mighty emperor and a great general, he wasn't bothered by these losses. He believed he could do without them, and history will prove him wrong. This is because those that defected were the strategists and specialists, the men who won wars and not just died in them. This left Napoleon with inexperienced soldiers to fight his battle. But because Napoleon had a history of winning his wars, he dismissed and underestimated these defections. He believed that with his massive army, he would still beat Russia and her allies as he had done many times before. But this battle was different. Napoleon was roundly defeated, and this defeat would set him up for his ultimate loss at the Battle of Waterloo 2 years later. Just like Napoleon's big army, Ruto has lost his strategists and specialists. Just like Napoleon, Ruto finds solace in the presence of his vast army of elected officials, majority of whom are political juveniles who were only sworn into office 5 years ago. And because of this, just like Napoleon, Ruto will lose the next battle he fights and the election after that.
So, just like my two colleagues, today I would like to respond to an article, but this one is from The Elephant by Dauti Kahura, entitled Elections 2022, Mount Kenya Foundation Remains Mum. In the article, Kahura attempts to make the argument that the apparent silence of the MKF is a clear indication of the hostility in the mountain towards Baba and his backers. He asserts that both the Mount Kenya Foundation and the Council of Elders have been forced to go underground because of their open support for the former Prime Minister. Now, in my view, Mr. Kahura has truly missed the mark and misinterpreted the role that MKF has to play in Gema politics. And this is what I would like to address today. I would like to agree with Mr. Kahura in his definition of the Mount Kenya Foundation. The MKF is a collection of top leaders from the Gema region brought together to influence politics. It was founded to ensure that the Moi years in which Gema money was brought to its knees, they would never happen again. And so it is safe to say that the MKF is an organization of money. This means that they have major influence in Gema politics because in the mountain, money talks. But unlike most political actors, the MKF does not need to parade themselves and make noise on the top of vehicles in support of their preferred candidate. Instead, they influence politics in the boardroom, and it is in the boardroom that the president is selected. Therefore, it is safe to say that MKF practice the concept of elite consensus. Now, elite consensus is the idea that a group of small but critical individuals that consist of members of the economic elite, the leaders of ethnic groups, and the policy planning networks hold the power in a state. These are the owners of things. They make the big decisions, and most importantly, can direct their massive resources behind one candidate. This is what the MKF is, and this is why their support for Raila is so important. Raila himself has experienced it.
Yes.
In the past, Raila would go straight to the masses and would gain zero momentum in the mountain. But this time round, he understood that to make progress in Gema, you must have the support of the owners of things. And this is where Kahura begins to misunderstand the MKF. They do not need to be vocal in order to have spoken. This is why Kahura's attempt to paint MKF's silence as a sign of hostility that Gema holds towards a Raila presidency reads false. And I say so for a number of reasons.
Okay.
First and foremost, and to reiterate, the MKF does not need to be vocal in order to have spoken. And they have been vocal about who they support. They have.
For avoidance of doubts that this forum has today unanimously chosen the Honorable Mother Karua to be our official convener and our spokesperson.
And this is not only for this generation, it's for generations to come. The interests of the mountain are paramount to ourselves as we think as Kenyans. We are very clear in our mind.
It is Baba and Martha, and they were joined by other Gema leaders, as you'll see. There is no need to continue to repeat the same message, not at this stage of the election. We are entering the second phase of campaigning, consolidation of the bloc. And here, MKF's resources are immeasurable. This is because Raila needs to overcome the hurdles that have kept him from the mountain, and that task requires immense financial and intellectual resources. Enter MKF. They were the reason 3,000 traders from Gema endorsed Raila earlier this month. Now, is it possible that they are also the reason that Karua was selected to be Raila's running mate? I wonder. In any case, this is MKF's value proposition to Raila, and the second reason why Kahura's understanding of MKF is somewhat lacking. In some, like in chess, winning an election is a nuanced process.
It is.
The moves that were made in the first phase cannot be replicated when in the end game, and that is understood by the MKF. Openly proclaiming support for Raila last year was just phase one. Now, we are closer to the end game and their role has shifted. But anyways, Baba Namatha, they say, Baba Namatha it shall be. Thank you so much for joining us on the Media Police Post. Journalists and a columnist, you've been put on notice. See you next Monday.